Okay, cool. First off, congratulations, Kelly, on being named the 2023 ASCA Coach of the Year. What a fantastic achievement. And was that a little bit of a surprise, or were you ready to jump out of your chair?
It was very much a surprise. I would say, paying about 80% attention while I was having a chat to some people at the table. So the name comes out and then my face goes up on the screen. I was quite shocked.
Well, very well deserved. I guess today, hoping to learn a little bit about you for anyone that maybe hasn't followed your career so far. So, can you tell me a little bit about what your career progression has looked like?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I started with my prac in strength and conditioning, and it was just pure luck that of all the things that you can do with exercise science, that S&C was the sort of stream that I ended up going down. I had a bit of a late organisation because I had to get a subject done, and most people had sort of a year to sort theirs, and I had about 6 weeks, and I happened to stumble across Acceleration Brisbane and sort of got in there and thought, oh, I've done a little bit of PT because I thought it would help me through uni and some of my subjects later. So
Yeah.
the hand coaching stuff made a lot of sense. And the whole way, like from when I was like 14, I think I coached a under 13 softball and netball team. And the whole way through school, I sort of had a team that I coached the year below. So the coaching thing was very inherent to me and something that I really enjoyed doing. I did my hours and my time with that and got to the end of it and asked if I could maybe stick around, and they offered me a job. So
Nice.
that was pretty good.
You put in some hours and got there. Yep.
Yeah, sort of got there. And it's just that, I guess that was probably my first hint at around the industry of, put your hand up for things and say yes and have a crack and do a bit of extra work and you'll probably see some dividends. So I worked there in the private space for a few years, and then there was an opportunity down in Melbourne to kind of pursue the same thing, but as in a head coach role. So same thing. I sort of thought, okay, well that sounds pretty interesting and sort of like the next step. So I said yes to that. I went down there and coached still in that private space, but more like running the facility and working with the prac students and running our intern program and just really getting a business off the ground. So I got a little bit of like, I did business at uni as well as my exercise science degree. And there was a lot of the concepts of like marketing and managing yourself with setting up a new business. So I got a really nice kind of 360-degree view of heaps of different sports and athletes and programs and in the school space as well down there. And that was just, yeah, I guess in terms of broadening my skill set. So a lot of what we focused on in that space is speed, acceleration, running form, and how the gym complements that component of your training. And I got a little bit of an exposure to some overall team preparation stuff in my first role and then in the one down there. So it was a nice, like, I got a little bit of everything. So I think I was pretty lucky with that kind of position. And then, yeah, after a couple of years, I was cold. So I decided to move back to sunny Brisbane from the cold. And I actually moved back and enrolled in my DIP Ed, which at the time was that 12-month piece. You could do your 12 months of study and be a senior school PE teacher.
Yeah.
Just that I always kind of had in the back of my mind, the idea of teaching, and had expressed to a few people. I think I'd applied for a role at QAS in the meantime, and then they gave me a bell about 6 weeks into my uni and offered me a role there. So sort of,
Fantastic.
yeah, kind of putting it out into the universe that you're looking for something, but kind of having a contingency plan at the same time. And yeah, went into QAS and same sort of thing. I was really fortunate that with my background in speed and conditioning, as sort of the formulation of my coaching and programming philosophy, that there was a role up for grabs with field hockey and some cycling, which I love cycling myself. So yeah, jumped into that and then spent the next 7 years there. And then
Just a little blip in time.
a little bit of time there, blink and you'll miss it. Yeah, got a good spread of, again, heaps of different sports on the track with the cyclists, with a bit of athletics. Always sort of had a field/team sport, which not everybody sort of gets the opportunity to do that. And then, as you can tell by the purple, decided at the back end of last year that I was little job popped up at the Queensland Firebirds, and I love my netty, and I'd always sort of had in my mind that like netball was a sport that I'd really love to work with, like the translation of speed, agility, power, strength into a sport like netball. Like it's so there and it's so consistent. So yeah, I sort of thought I have to go for this role. Like I don't need a new job. I actually love what I'm doing still at QAS, but I just had a thing in me like I have to go for this. And
No,
yeah,
absolutely. Right time, right place,
yeah,
all fit into place.
yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what your current role looks like with the Firebirds?
Yeah, so my role title is the head of strength and conditioning of Netball Queensland. So I sort of oversee our pathways and academy athletes, as well as then having that role with the Firebirds, with the main team. So a big part of that sort of underpins what I'm doing day to day is trying to formulate how do we set a standard at the Firebirds, and then how can we see that sort of trickle down into our academy and our other streams, with the goal being that we develop these really great athletes and netballers below us, and they all want to play for the Firebirds, and they come directly through our pathway. So whilst I've got the specific day to day of strength and conditioning for like the key squad, I'm always sort of having everything underpin of what can we do in our pathways level, so that I've just got these great athletes coming through the door on their journey all the time and wanting to stick in Queensland. That's a real goal for us at Netball Queensland. And then, so I work with an academy S&C there as well, Rhett. So he's been really great. He was there before I got there. So then he's been really great with kind of like pulling me on board with what they're doing and what they've got running with academy, and how it's sort of looked previously. So that's been super helpful. Another part of the role is the sports science piece. So obviously you tend to go like, I'm either a sports scientist, like I'm a data guy, or I'm like I'm the girl that's in the gym and the hands-on. And I think I generally live a little bit more on the hands-on programming, love to see changes eliciting in the athlete. Somebody else can maybe do a bit of the reporting, but it's on me. So yeah, working a lot more in the catapult space and GPS. I've worked with it previously, but working with indoor metrics and the way that they look and the way that they report, sort of deep in that at the moment. And then we're in pre-season at the moment with the girls, so all things fitness, conditioning, speed, power, just trying to build the athlete up to tolerate what will be like a pretty solid competition picking up in the middle of April. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit, and I'm sure it's evolved over time, but what is your kind of coaching philosophy?
So I'm very much in the develop the athletic qualities and develop really high quality movements. So I think that we can get a bit carried away, I guess, with all of the little nitty gritty bits of S&C, and there's so many excellent sort of pathways to go down and get really, really good at. But a big one for me, and whether it's potentially coming from that youth development space early days and constantly trying to work on movement quality, that underpins heaps of what I do. I think that if you can move really well and you can learn to do that quite autonomously, then we can load it, then we can express it, whether it's on the court or on the field. And the bit that sort of marries up there for me is that whole, the human being first. Like I know that we talk about it a bit, like human first and then athlete second, but I really try to have it so that my number one priority is to understand what the athlete wants out of their career. Like I am there, it's my career, like I'm here, but ultimately I'm there supporting somebody else's whole life, essentially.
Absolutely.
Athletes, they don't just go like, oh, I'll just be an athlete Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'll just go be like a human the rest of the days. Like it's so crossing over for them, trying to understand why they're there, what they want to get out of it, and understanding their motivations is a huge piece for me when I'm my overall sort of programming and coaching philosophy is, figure that out, get them moving and feeling really good, and then capitalize on those gains later.
And I assume that fits in really well where you've got a pathway up to your senior squad and how that integrates.
Yeah, definitely. We're trying to really refine our benchmarks and what we think is important as a netballer for a lot of our girls, but given the crossover of other sports and the opportunities available in other sports for female athletes, which is amazing. Obviously, we're all competing for a group of athletes. If we can take these girls that love netball and they're in it and just develop their underpinning athletic capacity, and they can see a real change in themselves and the change on the court, then we see them more likely to progress through our pathway and stick with a sport like netball, because we're sort of giving them that overall ability. So yeah, it's definitely driven a lot of our conversations in the last few months around what are we benchmarking, why are we benchmarking that, what's important to us. But yeah, what do our athletes actually look like as athletes, and then off the back of that, how do we make them better netballers?
Yeah, very cool. So I guess coming back to you, what do you think are some of your unique skills that have helped you to be successful in your career?
I guess it's I like to think that I'm pretty good at getting people on side and communicating with one another and creating a really good environment to be in. I think that whether I was aware of, I probably didn't have the best self-awareness early days, but whether I had a junior athlete or like a 15-year-old athlete or a pro athlete, kind of try to draw them all in the one session and get around each other and create a space for that they want to come and train, because they want to come and train, then they're probably going to show up consistently. And if they're consistent, I'm probably going to get some results. So I think I kind of knew that was a thing that I was doing, but until I did a little more reflection, probably over the last few years, to understand that it's not just, oh, I have good buy-in, I build good relationships. It's like, how do you do that day in, day out? How do you do that? What about the way that you approach it makes that, I guess, successful? Because you can have the intent of doing that, and then sometimes that doesn't mean that you actually build really good relationships with them. You just think that you do. So understanding what you do, why you do it, and how you do it each day. I think I've really built my self-awareness over the last few years to understand that cultural piece, and try to build a culture in a team and get athletes to get around each other and enjoy coming to training. And if they're all there enjoying training, then they're getting around each other. Yeah, that's probably something that I think has really helped me progress. Some of the stuff that I do with ASCA, they've really driven that. Yeah, go out and organize yourself, and then don't let anybody else try to be responsible for your career progression.
Well, leading on that, you spoke about recently in an online event taking the opportunities that were presented to you. And in particular, I know that you've done various things with the ASCA, including, coaching cricket courses and strength and conditioning courses over in India. How did those opportunities come about, and what did you learn from those sort of experiences?
Yeah, I really tried to, again, just put it out there with conversations with people that, I don't know, maybe you see someone and go, why would I tell them the next thing I want to do in my career pathway? Like, it's not really a conversation that you're having, but trying to figure out how can I have that conversation. So I guess I put it out there a bit that I would like to, put my hand up for some different opportunities. The ASCA one sort of came about for India. Again, talking to sort of Julian around, I want to experience something different. I want to keep on making sure that I'm in my role at the moment, but I'm having a look at what else is available around me and that will help me sort of grow as a coach overall. And I think it's, just being willing to actually say, I do want to keep progressing, and I do want an opportunity to try something a little bit different. And I mean, I love cricket, so being able to work with cricket for a whole week straight in India is a pretty clear-cut one for me. But yeah, I just think it's letting people know like what you're about and things that you would maybe like to experience and do, and not being scared to put your hand up and say, like, I still need to keep growing. Like, I want to keep pushing myself and grow. I think sometimes some of us are guilty at going, oh, pretty good at that, or I'm pretty happy where I am, or I've worked my way up. But it's not about like working your way up, it's about expanding your horizons. So, well, for me anyway. So yeah, I think that's probably how I've gone about that. And then just the overall PD, like, I love learning off other people. I love picking their brains, seeing how they think, understanding their different thought process, and just absorbing it, and not necessarily using it all, but just absorbing it and seeing what I like and what I don't like, and coming back to it and challenging myself later on.
On that, are there any particular resources? You spoke about your, ability to communicate with your athletes and how you've really worked on that. Is there anything in particular that you found really useful in developing that skill, or is it just practice over time?
It's a bit of trial and error. Sometimes you try to do something, it just doesn't happen the way that you want it to. The resource side of things is probably a lot of reflective practice. So at a simple point, that was just recording yourself coaching and understanding the way that you use language in the weight room and on the field, and the different meaning that athletes can draw from that. And then through listening to yourself coach across the day and the little casual conversations you have, you get a really good idea of that reflective practice of, was that productive? Was it not productive? Would I keep it? Can I try something different? And just trying a lot of different things in that process on the floor, listening back to it and just, listening to how I felt about it. And then also coming back to that sort of question you asked before around your philosophy, maybe not at the higher level of your overarching philosophy, but like, why do you do what you do? And coming back to that, like, why do you love showing up at work every day as an S&C, and what's in that to you? And that process of trying to figure that out, it can actually be quite hard.
Yeah.
There might be a list of like, I kind of like this, I like a bit of that, and that's pretty cool as well. Like, I get to wear my running clothes every day. Like, that's great, but that's not a why I do what I do. So actually doing the reflective process of sitting down and trying to figure that out, and like that's a formal process. That's a understanding the research and reflection. How do you find something, adjust it, put it in place, and then reflect on it again and go around that circle? Like, there's a lot of research on that. And the next little bit for me was having some formalized mentors where I could sit down at what in leadership and management space specifically, like how I want to be seen, how I want to be perceived, what are the structures and systems that again are in literature and in business practice that exist to support that, and then trying to just practice putting it in place, totally forgetting most of it, having to go back, read about it again, go, oh yeah, I really like that, and then trying it again and just doing that over and over and over again. And then I launched into my grad cert in leadership and management as a bit of extra post-grad study. And that whole course has been awesome for reflecting on whether it's from your own leadership practice or other leaders in your space and what they do well and how they do that well. Yeah. And understanding, again, the sort of research and concepts behind what you see in practice with those really great leaders that you respect and want to be like. So it's sort of formalized, but then it's practicing that over and over again as well.
Fantastic. I mean, it sounds like you're not afraid to challenge yourself. Is that something you would encourage from any sort of up and coming S&Cs?
Yeah. I think you just putting your hand up for things and having a deeper look into yourself and what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think is just incredibly productive. Like, you can only move further forward by doing that. And you might have a few little speed bumps on the way where you check yourself and then you panic and you freak out and you get down on yourself because actually there's heaps that you think that you're not doing right. And like, I've had many different little blocks of time where I've been in a full whirlwind of like, I'm no good at anything, and then sort of crawling your way back out. But yeah, I think I used to really hate having those hard conversations with people and asking for feedback, and I was a bit of a teacher's pet, so I really love positive feedback. Didn't love
Don't we all?
Right? Like, I'm a real feedback sandwich goer. Just give me the stuff in the middle, but tell me what else I'm doing right. But I've actually I've looked into that more, and the reason I like that sandwich so much is because it gives me direction. It's keep this, change or work on this, but also keep this. So you need to know what you're doing well to understand what else is in the middle that you need to work on. So yeah, being willing to get a bit embarrassed and maybe do something not that well, but you had to go at it. And so long as you you're trying to be a good person and you're putting your best foot forward and you're being really honest, it doesn't really matter if you mess it up because you've tried to get those other 3 bits right.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a change, of course, but you are a female strength and conditioning coach in what's traditionally been a fairly male-dominated industry. What has that been both challenging and rewarding, or what are some of the things you've noticed in that space?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I ebb and flow between there's some challenges, but there's some real benefits and positives. From like a overall in the workspace coaching men's teams, yeah, and sort of challenging what is that traditional male model of an S&C. I've never personally had any real issues pop up, potentially some career opportunities where I think people might have seen me with my high pitched voice and tending to look a bit younger maybe than what I am, as having less experience than what I have. But so long as you recognize that, I've just brought people on board of, okay, well, you're not going to ask me 20 questions about my career, what I've done. So I'm just going to tell you in a way that's not too not too intrusive, but I guess problem solving through that without getting super offended or stuck on it and just figuring it out is the way that I've approached some of those things. But I don't know, like I often think being a female coach has been a real point of differentiation for me. I do have, that we talk about the people skills, and you come in and build a good relationship, and I think the guys I've worked with are equally as good as the women that I work with. But I think that when they've often had male S&C, male S&C, male S&C, the change up of a female S&C can be really refreshing. So I've actually seen that as a bit of a benefit or an advantage for me.
Yeah.
I think interviews, same thing, like potentially see a few of the guys interview similar and then I kind of pop up. I like to have in the back of my mind that that's a strength, not a challenge.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I've got 2 older brothers. I live in the lands of, being a little bit more boisterous. So that probably helps with some of the men's teams that I worked with.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
that's great. What's your favorite thing about being a strength and conditioning coach?
Favorite thing. It's the culmination of hard work that I see my athletes put in and then the outcome that they get from that. So particularly like I love being in the rehab space and seeing the hard work to see an athlete get back up to being where they need to be. But yeah, I just think I've always loved, looking at things like energy system development, and you program for that and you plan for that and you execute something. And if you're lucky enough that it comes off and they seem to improve with that, like that just like that really gets me. And then, yeah, seeing an athlete just be really, really proud of themselves and kind of knowing that you've been there helping them along the way. It's probably my number one favorite thing.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. Getting close to the end here, Kel. Sort of touched on this a little bit already, but over your journey in coaching, what are some of the challenges and changes you've seen in the S&C industry over your time?
Yeah, I think the technological side of things, like and the improvement in a lot of tracking technology, but then equally this flow between something comes in, we need to know a lot about it. Actually, let's make sure we get the basics right first. Like, I feel like that's just something that it's changed a lot, particularly, over the last 10 years with what you can track in the gym. But then you get these absolute stalwarts that they've been in the industry for 30 years, 30, 40, 50 years, and they go, oh, we just got to get the basics right. And you sort of go, yeah, okay, like that's, yeah, but there's these other ways of using technology that comes in, but then it's, yeah, the change that can make for athletes that are working at the 1%ers, and that technology piece with them working at that sort of level, I think that has really changed in S&C. but it, again, we just always come back to do the basics really well. So it's sort of funny, like that's changed heaps, but it also kind of hasn't. And then it's more discussion around soft and hard skills and people going really, really technical and now coming more into the coaching. How do we coach? How do we manage athletes? How do we get people on side? Like, I think that when I started out, it was really coach heavy, very technical, very like you're in S&C, you're in the gym, you're conditioning, that's what you're doing. And now people are more interested in broadening their skill set across the board to leading and managing and building relationships. And it feels like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels like we have more career opportunities ourselves as S&Cs. Like, it feels like there's 4 or 5 different pathways you can go down rather than just the on the tools or head of performance strength and conditioning coach. Yeah, that's definitely been a bit of a change.
Yeah, definitely an exciting time in strength and conditioning, I think, with that expansion. But I mean, do you think that makes it more challenging potentially for junior coaches coming in? Like, where do they start? Do they start focusing on the technical, or do they branch out straight away and try and be a jack of all trades?
So hard, because realistically to be a jack of all trades, you've got to do your time, right? Like, you've got to learn things, try things, fail at things. Definitely, guilty of getting frustrated that, I don't know, like I'm not feeling like I'm progressing forward, and I'm like, I just haven't even had the time in that thing to understand how it works and what I've done right and what I've done wrong. Like, you've just got to do the time in the things and figure them out. And somebody can tell you like, oh, don't waste your time on that. I've tried it, or it's not a system that works, or I've tried that training philosophy. But until you try it yourself and understand like why it's good, why it's not, and how it fits, you don't learn. So it's nice to have these people suggesting, I wouldn't even spend my time writing it up that way or working with the athletes that way. And yeah, you've actually just got to have a crack yourself. But I do think that it makes it harder for the more upskilled that the rest of us get that have been here for a little while. It does make it hard for those junior coaches coming through uni and into S&C to know or understand what angle that they should go after to make themselves employable and upskill. I also think we talk all the time about our improvements and the areas we need to improve. I don't think we spend enough time talking about the stuff that we're really good at and how we get better at that. And yeah, I think just having the conversation across the space that you're not going to be amazing at everything. You might be a pretty good generalist because you've had the experience across a lot of things, but it's actually okay that you're not like an absolute gun in every single space.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Thank you, Kel. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on that maybe I haven't led you towards?
I think sometimes we feel like like a big thing that I've probably noticed in myself is you feel like you have to have this persona about you as an S&C sometimes to be really like hard-headed, or you've got to be able to just ignore the fact that they're hurting and push them further, or not be the person that they come to have conversations. Like, it's your job to just get them back on track. And I think there's something that has really helped me to coach better and to enjoy my space better is just like understanding who I am and what I bring. And if somebody gives me feedback that, I'm too nice to the athletes, or don't challenge them enough, it's a thing for feedback to take on and consider. But if it's going to affect you being your authentic self and delivering your best possible program, I think you've got to consider whether you really need to throw the baby out the bathwater, or if you just commit to that and trust that that's your authentic self and that's what you bring every day, and that's actually how you operate best and bring the best to athletes. That's just, another sort of something that I hold pretty dear to me now after a lot of feedback and process of reflection and everything.